Oh, hey YouTube, it's Chuck. Welcome back to the apiary. Actually, right now we're in the front yard, not in the apiary, but look at what I got here. These are all the honey supers that I just finished extracting, and they're just essentially just bare wax. I bring them out to the front yard so as to prevent robbing in the apiary, and the bees are just licking the wax clean. They're essentially wet supers. I put them out in the front yard and they clean them up. And look, and here's even some buckets of the cappings wax, and I just have the bees out here licking these dry so that when this is all nice and dry, I put it in my wax melter, my solar wax melter, and it just turns it into blocks and there's no honey involved. And of course, we're in a dearth now, so this is essentially open feeding for the bees. So everything I use in extraction, I bring out here to let the bees clean it up. I'll hose it off a little bit afterwards, but the bees are doing the work, and boy, will they find it. I mean, even this little bar that I set my frames on, they've licked it completely clean. I bring my Maxent extractor out here. They lick it clean and I just hose it off. It's just part of the cleanup. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about Beekeeper's Gold. And you remember what Beekeeper's Gold is? Beekeeper's Gold is drawn wax frames. Because if you've got drawn wax, the bees will fill this so much faster than having to go ahead and make the wax before they store it. So having this ahead of time makes next harvest essentially that you'll collect a lot more honey because it takes so much sugar or nectar to create wax. And if they don't have to do that step, it just goes straight into storage. And of course, if you've been beekeeping for a few years or you're just learning, you may have heard of the wax moth. The wax moth is the enemy to the beeswax. If you store this almost anywhere except for a refrigerator or a freezer, if there are any ways of pests getting into it, and just like cockroaches will find a crack anywhere, wax moths will find a way into this wax. And what the wax moth does is the adult wax moth will lay her eggs inside of this wax. When those eggs hatch, the larvae will weave their way through this wax, eating it as food. And if you've ever seen a comb that's had wax moths in it, it's got these little silky trails underneath the wax, and they're just chewing their way through it, and it turns into crumble, and effectively your wax is not completely destroyed, but you know, a large percentage of it is eaten. It becomes very brittle, and then the bees got to build it back. And here's an example of a couple frames that perhaps in years past the wax moth got a hold of, and I had to scrape it off, or the bees scraped it off. So these are unfinished frames, and I'm going to tell you in a little bit why I've got these separated out. But what I'm really here to talk to you about is how I protect my wax. I use Xentari. Xentari is also known as BT, and BT is a generic name in agriculture for Bacillus thuringiensis. There are many variations of this, but the one that helps prevent wax moths is of the subspecies Aizawai, A-I-Z-A-W-A-I. So BT subspecies Aizawai. And then here's a little up close, and I'm going to try to put a picture of this that's static instead of just on the video so you understand what it is. And this is a organic solution to this process. Once I take it out of the bag, I put it into a dry storage, and this is what it looks like. It's just a dry powder that you take 4 teaspoons to a gallon of Xentari BT into a mixer, just kind of like this, and you mix it up. This is a 2-gallon mixer, so I've got 8 teaspoons in here. I said teaspoons, yeah, it is teaspoons. And once that's mixed up, I essentially just spray this on here, and it protects the wax from the wax moths. So that's the important content of this lesson, is that Xentari BT is the way I protect this. Unless you have a walk-in freezer or a walk-in refrigerator, this is the way to do it. Now, if you're commercial and you've got thousands of hives, this probably isn't for you, because you essentially have to spray this on. And just while I'm sitting here, I'm going to just kind of let you watch a little bit of how I do it. These are already sprayed. You essentially take the wax out, and I just spray it on. I try to get it inside the cells and cover as much wax as I can. I haven't done any experimentation on how little is required, so I essentially drench it, which may be more than I need, but this stuff is cheap. I get it on Amazon or wherever I can find it. It's about $25 or $35. I'll try to put a link if I can find it. It seems like I bought it off Amazon one time and then it wasn't available on Amazon. But after I spray it, I essentially put it back in there. And as I'm going through these frames, what I'm thinking about is cleaning the frames, because sometimes I've got my hive tool right next to me. If you've got propolis and things like that, you know, now you're doing 1x1 frames, this is when I'll scrape propolis off. And, you know, because essentially this is going to be put away until the next flow is on. And really, I just want to pull these out and throw them right on the hive. Now, this one is looking really, really good with respect to these wax frames. I've already cut them with I use a hot knife when I extract, so they're perfectly sliced down. And all the wax cappings, I essentially have in a wax capping bucket. And then I let the bees lick it clean out here. But the other thought about this is, while you're going through these frames 1x1, if you find one that didn't completely get drawn out, or if you find a frame that perhaps they're going to have to do some work on, maybe you want to separate those out and put them in their own frame, and maybe even put that on top of a hive with some sugar water this summer to let them draw it out now, even though you're not in a flow. So as I go through this box, when I find frames like this, see how there's no wax on here? This side has got some partial wax, so I go ahead and spray this down, but I set these aside. And the reason is I want an entire box of these, and I'm gonna go, after I melt this wax down, and I'm gonna brush these frames down again so there's nice fresh wax on here. And I'm gonna make a dedicated super of just these frames that need to be drawn out. That way, when I go to the flow next year, one of these frames is gonna need a lot of work, or if I haven't had them drawn out before then, I'll know, hey, let's save that one for the last one, because these are the frames that are completely drawn out that will collect the most honey the fastest. So this is just a technique that I use to, while I'm culling, that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm culling the frames to make sure that the ones that are ready to go in the next flow are completely drawn out, and, oh, by the way, completely protected with this BT, you know, to keep the wax moths out. It's just a way I've managed my wax keeping solution so that I get the maximum honey production out of my wax every single time. So it's just a process. All right, sorry about that. I had to cut away. Some neighbors pulled up and wanted to chat just a little bit. Hopefully I can pick back up where I left off. But what we were talking about is just the preservation of the frames, getting the BT on here, culling the frames so that you have specific supers that need more work, and the rest of the supers are just completely stuffed with Beekeeper's Gold, fresh drawn wax that is protected and ready to go on your hives when the next flow comes on. Obviously, getting these frames drawn out as a new beekeeper is a little bit of a chore. The best thing you can do is have heavy wax coated on them, give them sugar water, or during a heavy flow. That's the only time they can build wax. The young bees that flake the wax off of their abdomens have to have an active nectar or sugar flow in order to generate those wax flakes that her sisters come and pull off of her abdomen, chew up, and turn into the wax cells that we know as honeycomb. That's just the way it works. They need sugar or sugar water in order to do it. And if you're making sugar water a little bit thinner than 1-to-1 is very stimulative. I'm actually working on an experiment to try to find the exact ratio that they prefer when they take it. But, you know, nectar is about 1-to-4. It's about, you know, the same as we give hummingbird food, right? 1-to-1 is a little bit thicker than that we give in the spring. So there's a little bit of work maybe to be done on the ratios of sugar water. Anyway, that's really what I wanted to talk to you about today. What I use to protect my wax, how I go through my wax frames, cleaning off the propolis, coating the wax with Xentari BT. You know, if you feel like you have enough frames in order to manage it like this, and you don't have a walk-in freezer or refrigerator in order to protect your things, I recommend putting something on it, or you're just going to end up giving the wax to the wax moths one way or another. And this is the way I found to do it, and it's organic, and it doesn't hurt the bees, and it doesn't affect the taste of the honey or anything like that. It's pretty well known. If you're not sure about it, go ahead and do some searches on this with keywords of beekeeping and Xentari BT, and you'll find this has been used for many, many years. This is not a new trick that I invented, just sharing it with you. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Appreciate y'all's support, and enjoy the channel, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everybody.